Good morning and welcome to the Longboat Energy PLC Q&A session. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question received during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I would like to submit the following poll. I would now like to hand you over to CEO Helge Hammer. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you, Alex. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Investor Meet presentation. Today will be a short presentation specifically on our deal that we announced on Wednesday. I'm joined by Nick Ingrassia, our Corporate Development Director, who you all know from before, and by James Menzies, who has just joined us and will present himself shortly. We're delighted to have expanded our business in Southeast Asia through the corporate acquisition of Topaz No. 1 Limited. Topaz company has one asset, and that's a 15.75% interest in Block 2A in Sarawak, Malaysia, which is the block we operate. So it takes our interest up to 52.5%, which is a better and stronger position for taking this forward. The block contains a giant prospect called Katang, and James will explain that and present that prospect to us shortly. As part of the deal, James and Pierre Elliott will join Longboat, which we are also very delighted with, because it gives us a much better position to expand our Southeast Asia and to chase more assets and more opportunities in the region. In terms of the deal itself with Topaz, it involves strong incentives. There is an upfront consideration for the asset in shares, Longboat shares, worth $100,000. And then there are incentives. First incentive is to actually deliver a farm out deal, which will allow us to commit to and get the well drilled. And then there is an incentive related to making a discovery, a commercial discovery in the block, and that one, it has a payment upfront on discovery and a 2-year payment related to the share price development post discovery. So it's it's up to $3 million at the maximum. Also, James and Pierre has a strong incentive related to delivering production. The clear goal for Longboat now is to grow in production, both in Norway with our JPEX relationship that you know about, and in Southeast Asia. And we will come back to that shortly. But today actually will be a relatively short presentation because we have our interims coming up and we can deal with a lot of the other issues then. So I will now hand over to James. I hope you're still with us, James.
Yeah, let me just connect James. He's just coming back in Thailand with a connection that we're just bringing back in. Just give us 1 second, Helga. And hopefully James is with us now. Just with us. Hi, James. Can you hear us? We can hear you, sir. Welcome back.
All good. Thank you. Apologies, everybody. I'm in Southeast Asia at the moment with slightly ropey Wi-Fi, but all good. Yes, thank you. Let me just give you 2 minutes on who we are. I'm a technical guy by background, and spent most of my career with LASMO, it's a UK independent, in Southeast Asia and the North Sea, so in Vietnam and Indonesia principally, and worked M&A with LASMO, based out of London, before joining Lambert Energy, who, it's quite boutique energy advisory service that I was one of the founder members of, and then founded Salamander Energy, which was a Southeast Asian focused E&P company, which we sold to Opia a few years back. Pierre started in Total and got a lot of experience with the independent sector. So he's been with Cairn, Lundin, and Rock Oil. You may be familiar with some of those names. And Pierre and myself have been working together for the last few years on a variety of things in Southeast Asia. We've had an advisory business helping E&P companies set up and chase opportunities in the region. So we're quite well, I guess we've got a lot of experience and well versed in who's doing what opportunities around, big network. You know, we work with the NOCs, the national companies, we work with the majors, we talk to all the independents, the service sector, the banks. So you know, we come with a well-established network in the region that, and clearly, you know, we know the Longboat guys well. I've known the founders and the management team of Faro before Longboat, and you know, kept those relationships up. So we're well known to each other, and I'm really pleased to be working with these guys because you know, I think they're very much aligned with our own way of doing business. So yeah, it's going to be fun, and I'm sure we're going to build something quite exciting.
Thank you, James. I think over to Nick to give us a little reminder of the strategy and what we are all about down in Southeast Asia.
Thank you, Helge, and good morning, everyone. So this is a slide I think you've probably seen variations of previously. So I'll do just a very quick run through the strategy, and then there's another slide there to try and explain some of the thinking behind the strategy and really what attracted us to Southeast Asia. So the real question is, why Southeast Asia? Why have we chosen that as a sort of second leg to the story? And for us, when we were sort of looking and thinking about a year ago about how we sort of go about expanding the business, you know, we really saw that Southeast Asia was comparable to sort of our own sort of backyard here in the North Sea, but how it was kind of 15 to 20 years ago, where you have a lot of opportunities, both exploration, development, and production enhancement type opportunities, which are kind of largely being ignored by the majors, many of whom are exiting or adjusting their strategies. So that creates a sort of rich opportunity set for a small independent space. You know, there's quite high barriers for entry in Southeast Asia, and when I say that, I talk about it more as a moat for someone. So if you can get in there, if you can prove that you have the capability elsewhere in the world, and you can get in, it's a very strong. You have a very sort of strong credibility regionally, and therefore you can really achieve quite a bit. And one thing that is not so welcome out there is private equity. And what we've seen in Northwest Europe is that private equity has been a huge competitor for assets that we've been trying to sort of chase. And so if you remove them from the equation, that really opens up the playing field for small independents like ourselves. We see really sort of strong support of regulators like they used to be here in the North Sea. Really trying to promote new players coming in, and we've had a huge amount of dialogue with the likes of Petronas and other regulators who are very keen to see independents like Longboat coming and investing and trying to sort of move assets forward. And really we see a huge strong demand for sort of low CO2 gas to fuel the growing economies. And I'll come on to that in the next slide. So just a reminder, we entered Malaysia in the first quarter of this year through the Malaysian bid round 2022 to get the SK2A. And I know James is going to go through that in a little while, so I won't sort of say too much about it. I guess the only thing to point out is that it is a low-cost initial work program that is for 3 years. And so there's no firm well into the second phase. And so sort of studies are ongoing as we sort of prepare and think about that. We are the operator of this, but there's also a strong state participation. So you have both Petronas, the state oil company for Malaysia, but you also have Petros, which is a relatively newly formed partner owned by the Sarawak state, where the license is actually located. And so we've got a good relationship with both of those. And I think that will help us grow, especially in both, I guess, Peninsular Malaysia, but also in Sarawak. And having this license is really helping us establish a presence. And now following the transaction with Topaz, it means we'll have more people on the ground and we'll really be able to push that advantage. We want to be clear that the strategy out there in Southeast Asia is really focused on a full cycle business. I know that the first step in there has been getting a large exploration block, but really we want to exploit the changes that are underway there in order to sort of get access to production or sort of near-term developments, which have sort of low capex and short lead times, which is a little bit the opposite of what we see in Northwest Europe. And certainly between all of us, we have quite a bit of M&A experience and are kind of very happy to do interesting and innovative deals to try and get ourselves where we really want to be. I guess sort of coming back to this sort of low carbon piece, which I think is very important for us. I think it's important across the industry to continue to have a so-called sort of license to operate going forward. Is I think, in the longer term, we all need to be mindful of the carbon that we're, that is getting emitted. And so for us, when we're looking at Southeast Asia, you can see that there's huge amounts of primary energy consumption. So in the past 10 years, it's been one of the largest globally in terms of their increased consumption. But unfortunately, a lot of that is being met by coal-fired power plants. In fact, they are building new coal-fired power plants across Asia. And if you look at places like Vietnam, who have huge indigenous gas resources, they're actually still building coal-fired power plants, and now they're starting to import LNG. And so for us, we see this huge opportunity to sort of help be part of that transition, switching from coal to gas, and that has a huge carbon reduction potential. So there's a sort of huge net gain, and so Kertang will come on to. That's a giant gas prospect. Some of the opportunities we've been looking at have a sort of gassy nature. I'm not saying that we're just focusing on gas potential, but there is quite a bit out there, and we're seeing the similar thing in Northwest Europe as well, and we think that provides a strong story and an ability to finance M&A going forward. Maybe James, you want to talk a little bit about 2A?
Yeah, great. What I want to say about 2A. It's obviously the entry asset for Longboat. It's Topaz introduced Longboat to it. It's a targeted block. What I want to give you a sense of is that this is a block we have been following for a number of years. We're particularly focused on this block. We like it for a number of reasons I'm going to tell you about. So this isn't something that popped up in a license round and we just thought, whatever, let's just go and get it. This is something that we've done extensive work on. It did come up in the 22 license round, 2022, and we were encouraged by Petronas to bid for it, which is quite unusual and a bit of a change from what we're used to seeing from Petronas, where, as Nick was saying, the barriers to entry are quite high. We found that actually Petronas were very, very willing to deal with effectively a minnow, and because we could bring in established partners and operators like Longboat. So I think that was a strong positive. It sits in a hotspot. This area of Sarawak, the central Laconia area, and 2A just sits on the outboard portion of that. It's on the north central side. Has seen quite a number of discoveries. I think in 2022, there were 10 discoveries from 16 wells in Malaysia, exploration. And of those 10 discoveries, 8 of them were located offshore Sarawak. So it's seen as a real hotspot right now, lots of gas being found. Of course, there's a very ready gas market in the Bintulu LNG plant onshore Sarawak, which is, I think, the second largest LNG plant in the world. So, it needs feedstock. There's still demand, extensive demand for gas to get in there. So it's well located commercially and I guess technically. In terms of the data and what we know about it, it's a very, very large block. even this postage stamp map shows you the size of it relative to the Sarawak coast. It's 12,000 square kilometers, which is, it's big. It's got extensive 2D seismic all over it, and critically, there's 2 other bits of data which are really good. One is it's got 3D, relatively modern 2015 broad size 3D seismic, which gives us excellent image of the subsurface. and there's been geochemistry sampling done at the sea floor over the key prospect. And that's important. I think when you look at this little postage stamp seismic line, which shows you the Kertang prospect, what you'll see is, we call this a seismic line that speaks for itself. I like to say even my mother would identify the prospect here. We've got a nice structure, we've got brights. It's everything you want to see on a bit of data. And certainly in Asia, if you look at that, your number one concern immediately is going to be, is it CO2? And of course, that's not what we're in business to find. So geochem sampling has confirmed very high concentrations of methane and very low concentrations of CO2 on the seabed. And so that's a very, very positive indicator that we're not dealing with a large CO2 fizzy water discovery, but we actually have some interesting gas coming out of this system. I guess in terms of water depth, this block has water depths ranging from 100 meters to about 1,400 meters. Over the key structure, it's about 1,000 meters, so it's it's in relatively deep water, but not excessively so. This is not unusual for the industry to drill wells in this sort of water depth. It is a giant. So that structure, the map that you see there, the big anticline that runs north-south, it's like a huge hill. It's over 200 square kilometers in size. You'd only fit about 3 of those structures inside the whole of the M25 around London. It's pretty big. I mean, it's colossal in terms of its scale. Obviously, we see gas charge, we see gas clouds over it. And we see shallow prospectivity. Even on that line, you can see brightening above that main structure, where actually we've got quite a big volume of potential gas sitting trapped high up in the structure. We think it's in excess of 9 TCF of recoverable gas. That's the prospective resource in the mid case. And in terms of its risks, the key risk is going to be retention. As you can see, we see that gas has got out of there and has been trapped up shallow, and some has even got to the sea floor. And so, have we been able to retain that gas column within the Kertang structure is a key risk. So it's effectively retention and seal. Also on the reservoir is an effective reservoir. There isn't really any drilling that close by. About 90 kilometers away is the nearest oil gas discovery to here. So we are stepping away from established oil gas discoveries. However, the offset wells do tell us that there are reservoirs around. So we're confident there's going to be a reservoir in there. It's just the quality of that reservoir. And clearly charge is not an issue. We can see gas charge coming into here. It's pretty good. So risks around this structure are actually relatively modest, but it's very large. So it's a nice balance of risk reward. And I think the last point to mention on this is that it's not alone. You're going to hear us talk a lot about Kertang, because it's so big and it's so exciting, and it's got Petronas fired up. They want to drill it. Partners want to get after it. But actually, it's not the only one. There is multiple structures surrounding Kertang that are also extremely big. It's just that they're dwarfed by this giant. So we can't get away from the fact someone needs to drill this well, and we want it to be us. Anyway, I hope that gives you a flavor of what it is and why we're very excited about it. Helga.
Thank you. Thanks, James. That was great. It's great to be joined by James and Pierre. As you hear and know, they have huge experience and a very large network in the region. Also great to have now 52.5% of this giant. And it's the first time actually we show it to the market. So it's something really exciting that we have got in our portfolio here. I think other than that, I think we are, like with Longboat now, in a great position actually, with the JPEX deal in Norway put us in a strong position to grow in Norway, and we have a huge focus on delivering our first deal. Well, we did a first tiny deal, but our first significant deal with JPEX in Norway, and then take forward SK2A and do a deal in Southeast Asia. So those are like the three real focus areas that we have. And as you know, we're also drilling Velocet, and we couldn't comment on that today. That's operations ongoing. Also, we have the interims coming up in a couple of weeks. So in terms of a Q&A session, we'll keep that very brief this time, and only deal with the Southeast Asia question. So and Nick will take charge of that. So thank you all for listening to our presentation, and we'll have a short Q&A session.
Helga, James, Nick, thank you very much indeed for your presentation this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the top right corner of your screen. While the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I would like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via our investor dashboard. Nick, if I may now hand back to you to chair the Q&A, read out the questions where appropriate to do so, and I'll pick up from you at the end. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So a couple of questions have come in, guys, and I'll just sort of perhaps summarize some of them. So one of the questions is around sort of what is the sort of short-term priority in terms of sort of Southeast Asia? Is production the short-term priority for us, and kind of what sort of size, perhaps? I don't know. Maybe Helga, you want to start, and then.
Yeah, I think it's twofold, two priorities. I think we are very focused on getting some hard assets, some reserves, some production, some cash flow into the business, which will underpin kind of the value of the company. And then I think the second part of it is to take SK2A, take Kontang forward. And it's now with the big stake we have now, it will get a lot of attention from big companies, majors, and you've seen the majors are very active on the exploration side in Malaysia. Shell just announced active program, and Eni was drilling out there. So there's a lot happening. Don't know, James, if you want to add anything to that, or I think you're on mute actually.
Oh,
there
sorry.
now. Yeah.
There we go. So yeah, no, the majors are particularly active. Shell, as you mentioned, is a key player out there. We fully expect to see a lot more activity around Sarawak, and further deals to be done. And there's a license round going on. I'm not saying that's a priority for us particularly, but we're going to be seeing people coming in, out, and trading assets. And in fact, when we start talking about drilling this well, and how we're going to manage that, then clearly, we need. This is big boy territory. This isn't really for independents to pay for as such. We've got to play the role of catalyst here, and we see majors interested in this sort of size prospect and this geography. So yeah, it's busy and very exciting.
I think sort of tacked on to that, James, perhaps there's a couple questions around if we have any ideas about the cost of drilling on Kontang. I know that it's all kind of very, very kind of early stage. So is it too early to say, or?
Probably, but I mean, because the costs are moving around the whole time. So by the time we get around to planning this well seriously, they'll have moved again. But I mean, if people hold in their head a sort of $40 to $50 million figure, you're probably not going to be a million miles away. It might be slightly over, it might be slightly under, but it's going to be something like that. And clearly, one of the great benefits of the Topaz deal is now Longboat have got a big enough equity position that we can bring in a partner to cover costs and retain actually quite a material interest in it. so shareholders can take a ride on this without necessarily, you're not being diluted down to something in a chair. This could have a big result, and we could have a lot of it. So that's good.
And I guess again, a sort of further follow up on that, which is that why haven't the majors pursued Kertang to date?
Well, Shell have taken a lot of acreage roundabouts. It has been held by other companies. The seismic that we look at, the 2015 CGG, which is brilliant, the block was actually held by BHP, who were obviously quite a big player in oil and gas. But however, they made a corporate decision to leave oil and gas whilst the seismic was being processed. So it didn't get around to actually looking at it. It went back to Petronas. They held it, and it was them that came to us, to Topaz, and said, "Why don't you look at this?" So I don't think it's been widely looked at by the industry. Pierre and I came across it several years ago, and it's one we've been pursuing. But there are other structures out there. This isn't the only thing in offshore Sarawak. There's plenty else that people go for. It's just that we see this as being one of the biggest, and the risk reward looking extremely favourable. So I think we will see interest from the majors in 2A, and in fact our early conversations, when we've been talking about it at conferences and things, we are seeing a lot of interest from the industry in it.
Fantastic. Helge, perhaps one for you. There are a bunch of questions here which I think are more appropriately answered in a couple of weeks' time after the interims are out. There's sort of questions about what the cash position is and what have you. But there's a question here around the sort of timing. Are we still working on things in Norway, and our acquisition still very much front and center there? And do we have any sort of timescales? I know timescales are very difficult to talk about, as ever when transacting. But I assume, do you want to comment on sort of what's going on? I mean, in Norway, and how active we are?
Yeah, we're very active. I mean, there's no doubt it's very active, and there are a number of live processes ongoing. And we completed the JPEG transaction very quickly. Actually, we announced it in May. Mid-July, we were up and going. We did announce a small production deal with the Statue Satellites. That's on route to completion and needs some carve out. So that's kind of work in progress. And then we have in Norway a lot of development projects that are ongoing, and there are opportunities coming out of that, which is kind of keeping us very busy. It's difficult to know when we can actually get a deal done and announced, because it always takes two to do a deal. But there's certainly a lot of live discussions and processes running.
Excellent. One more for you, Helge. One we always get is why do you think the share price is not reflecting the excellent progress we're making?
Yeah. If I knew that answer, I would do something about it. It's a difficult one, and we are as frustrated as you are, I would say. But I think the only thing we can do is just build a business, put stone by stone, and then eventually, I'm confident that the values will come through.
I guess it's probably worth pointing out that the management all bought more shares at the beginning of the summer as well, given our sort of, we believe it's cheap as well, is probably the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
Maybe just kind of one last question. Again, most of the questions, thank you very much, but they really need to be answered as part of the interims, where there's going to be a lot more kind of information corporately about the business. I guess one more for you, James, before we sort of sign off, which is, are all the structures on 2A gassy, or could some of them contain oil?
Right now, I would say they're likely to be gassy and probably not oily. But we have a geological model where oil could be found down there. So it is possible that they could be oil bearing as well as gas. But you drill exploration, you always get a surprise, always. So you know, our knowledge is not that great, but yeah, we'd expect largely this to be a gas blow.
Great.
That's great.
Thanks.
Nick, Helga, James, thank you for being so generous with your time and addressing those questions from investors today. And of course, the company can review all questions submitted today and will publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. But before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to the company, Helga, could I please ask you for a few closing comments?
But yeah, just thank you all for attending, and you know, we're extremely happy with this last deal here, which kind of is an important step in a new exciting region with a lot of exciting opportunities. So a lot to look forward to. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Helga, Nick, James, thank you once again for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you will now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, and I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Longboat Energy PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good morning to you all.